So UFC 282 took place last night, and overall I think it was a pretty good card. The co-main event and the main event had some dodgy decisions, that's the best way to put it, but overall I think it was a good event. I'll be breaking down the co-main event and main event in more depth in other videos, and I'll be breaking down the big news that Dana White announced in the post-fight press conference. But this video is just going to be recapping and talking about all the other fights as well as the co-main event and the main event, just like I did for UFC 281. So let's waste no time and get into it. So we kick off the card with Cameron Saaiman vs Stephen Kozlov, and respect to Stephen Kozlov for taking this fight on short notice and keeping this fight alive. And it was very close, I thought. Obviously, Cameron Saaiman got the third round TKO, like I predicted, but I thought it was very close up until the third round, and we'll get into that. So the first round was a very good grappling exchange. I'd have to edge the round to Stephen Kozlov, because even though it was very close, lots of reversals, lots of sweeps, both men attacking submissions, Cameron Saaiman looking for the Kimura quite a bit, I felt personally, like they pointed out on commentary, that Stephen Kozlov was making Cameron Saaiman defend a lot more from the arm triangle, and sorry, not the arm triangle, the triangle choke, and Cameron Saaiman was on bottom for longer, Stephen Kozlov having a lot more control time, so I'd have to edge that round to Stephen Kozlov. And then the second round, I think this may have affected Kozlov going into the third round. I don't want to take away from Cameron Saaiman, because Cameron Saaiman won that second round in my opinion, but obviously it was a 9 round because he had the point taken off him when Stephen Kozlov got hit with an illegal knee, Joe Rogan. So it was a 9-9, so I thought we were going to see a draw, but that last round, Stephen Kozlov come out, he looked gassed, he was getting out-grappled. I suppose you can make the argument that Stephen Kozlov was slightly making it close because I think he reversed him once in the third round. But once Cameron Saaiman got on top, vicious ground and pound, he was piecing him up on the feet. Kozlov looked lost, he didn't know where he was. I thought he was out on the feet at one point. Very, very good performance by Cameron Saaiman, proving he's good in all areas. So it's going to be interesting to see who he fights next and how far he's going to get up in the division, because Stephen Kozlov was out grappling him in the first round and made it very close. Obviously, like I said, I think he won that first round, but he is the submission specialist. So it's going to be interesting to see where Cameron Saaiman goes. He's very humble in his post-fight interview, apologising for the illegal knee, but overall a good performance, and he wants to fight in London in March, so I think that's a good choice for him. Moving on up the card, we take a look at TJ Brown vs Eric Silva, and this was a weird fight. Eric Silva showed really low fight IQ, in my opinion. He didn't look good in there against TJ Brown. He got rocked straight away in the first round, and to be fair, he attacked the guillotine for a bit, and he did end up on top at one point, but TJ Brown was just out grappling him all 3 rounds. There was a bit where they were striking, and Eric Silva got the better of it in the second round, but he got taken down straight away, and in the third round, I believe he stunned TJ Brown, or hit him badly or something, and he just shot for a takedown, and I was thinking, what? It was really weird, really low fight IQ from Eric Silva. This does not look like the Eric Silva we're used to seeing, and not the Eric Silva we've seen on the Contender Series, and yeah, I don't know, well done to TJ Brown for getting his first finish in the UFC, but that was really weird for Eric Silva. I do imagine he'll fight again in the UFC, but I don't think I can ride with him because I'm baffled. It was really low fight IQ, really, really poor debut from Eric Silva. And yeah, credit to TJ Brown where credit's due. We end off the early fight pass prelims with Alex Hernandez versus Billy Quarantillo. And as I said, this was going to be a banger. It could be up there for fight of the night. I don't think it was fight of the night. Personally, we'll get to that in a little bit. But this was Alex Hernandez's featherweight debut, and I personally predicted Alex Hernandez to get it done, 29-28. He didn't. He got TKO'd in the second round, and that was a great stoppage by Chris Tognoni because it was getting scary. It looked like Alex Hernandez was going to go out, but before we get into that second round, let's give credit where credit is due to Alex Hernandez. That was a great first round. Personally, I had him winning it. He did get his leg kick checked early on, and he went down, but he did recover really well, and he was out grappling. He was piecing up Billy Quarantillo. He cut him open really bad where that elbow from the ground and pound really made his face a crimson mask. Don't get me wrong, Hernandez was cut open as well in that first round, but Billy Quarantillo that cut was nasty. And there was a beautiful moment. It happened actually later on in what I think is Fight of the Night. Bit of a spoiler there. He got like an arm triangle takedown, and he didn't get the arm triangle, but beautiful stuff. And before we get into the second round, respect to Billy Quarantillo's corner asking him 7+5, I think it was, and his child's birthday to make sure his cortex part of the brain was still there and he wasn't just fighting off pure adrenaline and instinct, because when a fighter's like that, you don't want to let them go out. They make stupid decisions, they risk more damage, so respect to his corner. But the second round, it started off well for Alex Hernandez, but Billy Quarantillo made a comeback, and this is where I didn't take into account the effects of the weight cut to featherweight, because Alex Hernandez was gassed, and Billy Quarantillo, he never gasses. He put on the brakes, he put on the pace, really making a mess out of Alex Hernandez. And like I said, great stoppage by Chris Tognoni. It was a brutal TKO win, standing TKO, and respect to both men for a good scrap. Alex Hernandez, I don't think he belongs at featherweight with his cardio being like that. If it is from the weight cut, maybe give featherweight one more go, or just go back up to lightweight. And I thought I said light heavyweight then. Yeah, lightweight. And respect to Billy Quarantillo. He said he wants to be on the main card. I think he should be on the main card. What an entertaining fighter. He had that great scrap with Shane Burgos last year, and this was his first fight back since, so respect. We then kick off our main prelims with Chris Curtis vs Joaquin Buckley, and let it be known, even though I said in my prediction video, Joaquin Buckley, I said Chris Curtis will get this done, but I said I was going to ride with Joaquin Buckley because he should be hungrier and more motivated, and I suppose he was, but Chris Curtis is a counter-puncher, and I should have seen this come in with Joaquin Buckley's glass chin. So the first round, Joaquin Buckley's round, he was pushing a pace, he was teeing off on Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis, I was thinking in the first round, credit to Joaquin Buckley's chin, it's improved a bit, he's taken some of Chris Curtis's biggest shots, and yeah, he looked good. Chris Curtis obviously the counter puncher, so he's a bit slower, he wasn't doing as much, but Joaquin Buckley was just 1-2 head kick to the body, he was teeing off to the body, good head movement, taking the shots, and I was thinking, maybe I was right to say Joaquin Buckley. But in the back of my head, I was like, no, it's going to be Chris Curtis, innit? I should have just stuck with Chris Curtis. And the second round was more of the same. Joaquin Buckley teeing off to the body beautifully at the end of round one. And in round two, he's just moving his head, taking his time, picking his shots. And he got caught. Chris Curtis down the middle, knocked him out. Early stoppage? No. Because I've seen some people say it was an early stoppage. Joaquin Buckley, there's a photo of him where he looks like Nick Cannon hitting the canvas. It is brutal. And yeah, Chris Curtis for the second round knockout or TKO, because I don't think he actually went out. I'm very salty about this because I knew Chris Curtis was going to win. But I said Joaquin Buckley. I said in the video I can't ride with Joaquin Buckley, but I'm going to do it this one last time. It actually paid off in the next fight, but Joaquin Buckley, I can't bet on him again. I think maybe it's got something to do with the fact he wants to stay a welterweight. Maybe he just thought, I got to take this middleweight fight because it's against Chris Curtis and there's a bit of bad blood, even though Chris Curtis said there wasn't afterwards. But who knows? I can't bet on Joaquin Buckley again. He really let me down here. Yeah, great performance by Chris Curtis. A lot of people will be like, oh, well, he got teed off, he got dominated, he got pushed a pace on. Well, he's a counter-puncher. What do you expect? Moving on up the card now to Edmund Shabazian versus Dalcio Lukiangbulu. I've definitely said that name wrong, but from this fight onwards, I got every fight right in my predictions, apart from the main event, and we'll get to that later, but Edmund Shabazian looked good here. So did Dalcio Lukiangbulu. Obviously, he did get TKO'd in the second round, but up until then, I think he looked very good. He just couldn't compete with someone like Edmund Shabazian. Shabazian looked like his old self. He was beautifully landing that front kick to the body, and we've seen that later on as well with Magomed Ankalaev. We'll get to that. And yeah, he was taking his time, picking his shots, keeping his distance, doing very well. I still kind of thought that Lukiangbulu was going to land at some point and just get a brutal KO, But he didn't, and I was like, well, Edmund Shabazian, he could be in the mix again. And let's talk about, before we get to the finishing sequence, sorry. It is important to note now that Luki and Bulu, Joe Rogan did point this out, he's not got the wrestling prowess as someone like Derek Brunson, but he might have got Edmund Shabazian down once, but Edmund Shabazian showed really good takedown defense. It's really improved since his last few fights, so it seems this new camp is working out with him. I believe he's training with Ngannou's coaches, because one of them did look like one of Ngannou's corner, but I could be wrong there. But that was a brutal knee, and Edmund Shabazian, he switched on the IQ, and he was just teeing off. He had that ultra instinct. He was going for it. He was chasing that finish against Luki Bulu, and he got it in the end. It was second round TKO. And I think I think it's too early to say Edmund Shabazian is back to his old self, or not that he's not back to his old self, sorry, but how far he can go in the division. But he definitely looked good. I don't think we should be giving him a top 15 yet, because top 15 is stacked. Obviously, you've got Chris Curtis at the bottom and going up, and Chris Curtis, even though you can say what you want about his performance in the first round, he did ultimately get the win, and he is a very powerful counterpuncher. So I think maybe give him another unranked opponent, and then give him maybe a Chris Curtis and see how he gets on. But Edmund Shabazian looking good tonight. Yeah, he looked very good. Moving on up the card, we see Jairzinho Rozenstruik, just as I predicted, knocking out Chris Daukaus in the first round. And if Daukaus is going to continue to fight a heavyweight, he either needs to fight someone unranked, or the UFC need to cut him. Because, like I said, Chris Daukaus, he's not good enough for heavyweight. He got rocked off of a jab. Don't get me wrong, it's heavyweight. They all hit hard. But he got rocked off of a jab, and then he got kneed. He went down, and then he got hit with like Jairzinho Rozenstruik running at him with a jab, and that's what ended the fight. It's just weird. I think Chris Daukaus should go down to light heavyweight, because he's carrying a lot of wasted weight at heavyweight, and I think it's just there to justify him being a heavyweight, when really it's just fat. And even at light heavyweight, I don't think he could compete with the top of the division. You know, you're looking at your Glovers, your Yuris, your Jamal Hills now, your Magomed, your Yan, and yeah, I just don't think he's got what it takes to be a fighter fighting in the top 15 of a division. Let's not take away from Rozenstruik. He put on a very good performance, obviously proving that his loss to Volkov was just a one-off. Like I said in my predictions, let's not take away from Volkov. He has got the power, but it was just weird seeing him get TKO'd like that in the first round. So, yeah, Jairzinho Rozenstruik with a good performance. He can turn around very quickly. I imagine we'll see him back by February, March, maybe in the main event of a fight night. And yeah, very, very good performance by Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Chris Daukaus probably going to get cut or fight someone unranked. And yeah, there's not much else to say about this fight. Our final prelim for UFC 282 was Raul Rosa Jr. vs. Jay Perrin. And fair play to the kid. It's hard to believe he's 18. He can't even buy beer in his home country yet, and he's doing this to people. He become like Patchy Mix for a round. He just jumped on the back. He was a human backpack, and he got the first round rear naked choke. I thought Jay Perrin was going to put up some sort of a fight, but he didn't, and all that trash talk just to get dominated like that, it's pretty embarrassing. I mean, I'm not saying I would do much better, I wouldn't, but yeah, Raul Rosa Jr., for him to be 18, he's got some serious talent, and he could become one of the top people in his division in the next 10 years. My only worry is that the UFC are going to try and push him really quickly and really fast, and that's going to damage his career. We've seen it with the likes of people like Sage Northcutt or Rory McDonald, who have come into the UFC really young and be given all these opportunities, and they take way too much damage in their career early on, and they just never quite live up to the hype. So, with Raul Rosa Jr., let's push him slowly if we really want to build him up. But knowing the UFC, they won't do it, because they've done it to people like Darren Till as well. I mean, we'll get on to him later on. But he took no damage. He can jump in straight away. He says he wants to be champion by 20. I don't think he's going to do it personally, but I imagine the UFC will want to push him like that if he keeps on performing like that. And yeah, fair play to him. He's becoming a likable personality as well. When he was like, I need a minivan so I can get a ride to the PI. Very funny. He seems like a humble guy. He's got the crowd behind him. And also, it's pretty funny seeing Jay Perrin realize his UFC career was probably over and trying to milk it by saying, "Yeah, the guy won. Let's give it to him in the last moments of his career." But fair enough to Rosa Jr. I may have underestimated him, and I'm looking forward to him. I said I was going to follow his career closely, and I'm going to continue to do that. We then kick off the main card with Ilia Topuria versus Bryce Mitchell. And going into this, a lot of people thought Bryce Mitchell was going to win after the press conference because he was switched on. He had some pretty fun lines such as "Does a coward show up prepared to die?" and stuff like that. And Ilia Topuria seemed to be beefing with Paddy a lot more, but Ilia Topuria, Bryce Mitchell looked off his game. Topuria was a whole step ahead. Topuria, I said this going in, he was going to be the cleaner and crisp striker, and he was going to be able to scramble and defend Bryce Mitchell's takedowns, and that's exactly what he done. Now, fair play to Bryce Mitchell, he did land a takedown at the end of round one and stayed on top, and that's the first time Topuria has been taken down in his whole MMA career, I believe, not just his UFC career. But it wasn't enough to win him the round, and just like I was saying for Joaquin Buckley earlier, I was thinking, credit to Bryce Mitchell's chin, it's holding up. He's taking some clean shots here. He did get cut open, but I think that was more from a clash of heads. And then I don't think he got dropped in round one, but round two, he got dropped, and this was the beginning of the end. The commentators were like, "Why is Ilia jumping on Bryce? He's going into Bryce's world." No, Ilia had Bryce hurt really bad. I mean, he was probably gonna beat him on the feet if it stayed standing anyway. Bryce Mitchell did show some good striking, and he showed he could hold his own, but it wasn't good enough when you're looking at someone as clean and as crisp as Ilia Topuria. So when Topuria rocked him, knocked him down, he went to the ground with him, and he just ragdolled him. He was picking him up, taking him down, brutal ground and pound. And just like Alex Hernandez earlier, he had that brutal arm triangle takedown. He literally was up against the cage in a clinch, locked in that arm triangle standing, and just ragdolled him onto the ground, took him down, and got the tap almost straight away from Bryce Mitchell. And I don't think any of us expected, even though Ilia Topuria's got good ground game, he's got lots of submissions, I don't think any of us expected him to tap out Bryce Mitchell. Bryce very humble. They shook their hands afterwards. I thought Ilia was going to maybe mention Paddy like he did in March, seeing as Paddy was in the co-main, but he didn't. He said he wants to take the UFC to Spain, I think specifically Madrid, and I don't think they have got an event booked there, so that could be something interesting. But overall, really good scrap, entertaining. This was my fight of the night, in my opinion. But I don't blame you if you picked Hernandez versus Quarantillo over this. And I've been saying, and a lot of other people have been saying, Ilia Topuria has been a dangerous guy. And yeah, he's been dangerous for a while, and he could really take over this featherweight division. Moving on up the card, we see Darren Till versus Dricus du Plessis, or Plessis. He said the S is silent, but I'm still struggling to pronounce it, so we're just going to call him Dricus. And Dricus got the third round sub. Now, we'll get into this because Darren Till, he didn't look as bad as he has, but it still wasn't great. So, obviously, first round Darren Till gets taken down by Dricus, dominated, the left eye swells shut, and he's giving a thumbs up, but I'm just thinking, Darren, you're getting battered to the head. It looks like you're going to get TKO'd. Come on, you got to do something. And Dricus expended all his energy here. And I know he says it's how he breathes, but I don't care what you say. No man breathes like with his mouth open after one round and says he's fine. But Dricus is a warrior. He had a second wind going into that third round, and we'll get to that in a minute. But credit where credit is due to Darren Till. He picked it up in the second round. He won that clean, crisp striking. He was hitting Dricus a lot. It looked like prime Till again in that second round. And Dricus was just taking those shots. He is a warrior. He's got a chin and a half, because most people, when they're that tired and stuff, they take those shots on the chin. Or even a normal man would take those shots on the chin when he's not tired and just think, I'm going to sleep or I'm getting dropped. I've had enough. But Drickus is a warrior, and he just stood there, took them all, ultimately lost a round. But the first round was a 10-8, so I was thinking, it's going to be a draw, but Darren Till looks good. And respect to Darren Till now, going into this third round, because I think at this point he tore his ACL. So I believe that's why he tapped in the third round, but he tore his ACL, and he was still happy enough to carry on for a while. He was signing autographs on his way out, so fair play to Darren Till. He put in a shift. We've got to give credit to him. But Drickus had a second win. He bit down on the mouthpiece. He matched Darren Till's energy in that second round. Both men were trading shots. It was very close. I think I was leaning more to Drickus personally, but I was thinking a takedown would change this all, because if you give that round to Darren Till, I'm not mad either. And as soon as I was thinking that, Darren Till gets taken down, vicious ground and pound by Drickus, and I was like, oh, it could be all over. And he rolled over to his back, and the choke wasn't even in properly, and he just tapped. And obviously we didn't know he's tore his ACL at this point, so I was thinking, why has he done that? It's like Jan Glover. But I do believe now the tap come because of the ACL, and he thought he probably wasn't going to get off, so he didn't want to take any more damage, or, carry on fighting with an ACL tear like that. But respect for him going as long as he did. People need to start taking notice of Drickus' name. As he said, the name is Drickus du Plessis, or Plessis, or however you say it. And yeah, he's got a very good win now over Darren Till. I know Darren Till hasn't been the best at middleweight, but it propels him into the top 10. Drickus can get a big name, maybe a Derek Brunson, because obviously he pulled out of his Jack Hermanson fight. I'm not sure why. Maybe there was a reason given, but yeah, give Drickus someone like Derek, really test his wrestling, because Derek is the offensive wrestler, and who knows what's next for Darren Till. I'd like to see him back down at welterweight, but I don't know if he will go there. I imagine he'll probably fight one or two more times, because he's only 29. Moving on up the card, this is where it started to take a bit of a turn. It was Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Alex Morono in a catchweight bout, and I feel bad for Morono, man. He was on a winning streak. He didn't have to take this fight, but he did. So respect to him for taking it and saving Ponzinibbio's fight. And he got his winning streak snapped in brutal fashion, and he was winning that fight as well. It was a bit of a chess match to start off with, and the second round was a bit of a chess match as well to start off with. Obviously in the first round there was that big knockdown where Morono went for a spinning back fist and missed. Ponzinibbio tried to follow up with a spinning back fist and missed, and Morono caught him with the right as Ponzinibbio missed. That was intense. I thought Ponzinibbio was going out then. And then of course in the second round, even though Ponzinibbio was outstriking him, Morono did knock him down once. So Morono was winning. The third round was pretty close as well. I'd say Ponzinibbio was winning it just because he outstruck him. But then that finishing sequence come. He knocked the jaw off of Morono, sent him into the shadow realm. His jaw was on the other side of his face. It was shattered. His eyes were rolling about. He didn't know where he was. And great stoppage by, I believe it was Jason Herzog in the cage then. That was brutal. Yeah, probably the most brutal knockout of the night. Maybe we didn't actually see a lot of KOs. It was mainly TKOs. So I think that was the most brutal of the night. Maybe you could argue Rosenstrikes against Chris Dorcas, but yeah, Morono going to the shadow realm with his jaw on the other side of his face. I'm not sure where both men go. Morono, I think he accepted he's not going to be champ at this point, and he's just taking his fights. But he did have a good win streak going, so maybe get him in there with. Oh, I don't know. I'd have to think about that one. But yeah, let's give Ponzinibbio his fight against Robbie Lawler. Why don't we do Ponzinibbio, Robbie Lawler, and Morono, Barberena? Why not? Moving on now to our controversial co-main event, Paddy the Baddy Pimblett versus Jared Gordon. Now, obviously I'm wearing my Paddy top. I'm a big Paddy fan, so I'm going to get a lot of hate for this and probably get called biased, but I'm not being biased. I do think Paddy won this fight. I'm going to make a more in-depth breakdown on it, so I don't want to give too much away here, but in my opinion, Paddy won round 1, he won round 2, but he did not win round 3. I don't agree with Dana White saying Jared Gordon coasted to a decision. He thought he was winning. I think the game plan was probably to try and get Paddy to win, but get Paddy against the cage and out grapple him to win. But yeah, I think Paddy won. I am worried for Paddy going forward because his striking seemed to improve, but it's the most striking we've seen for him in the UFC so far. And he was a good striker in Cage Warriors, so I think there's still a bit to be desired. He is a very good striker, though. People underrate him for that. But he does leave his chin very high, and that does worry me going forward. Because against someone in the top 15, he's going to get, like, I've seen people saying Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier will land a good tuck on his chin and put him down. And Paddy's never been KO'd, but his chin being so high, it's out there for the taking. I think even someone like Terence McKinney, obviously Paddy could beat Terence McKinney because he could out grapple him. But if someone like Terence McKinney lands a good shot, he could KO Paddy. But I I don't know what the UFC do with him going forward. I imagine they'd probably want to protect him. Maybe I thought initially they'd want to rush him into the top 15 if he wins in dominant fashion. But with controversy like this, I think they want to keep him unranked. And I'd probably imagine if he's ready to go, they want to get him on the London card. So I think they'll give him the winner of Drew Dober versus Bobby Green, because they're right on the cusp of the top 15. But I think we should give him a Jim Miller or Joe Lawson just to test him. But yeah, hate me all you want, guys. I do think Paddy won this fight, and I will be making a more in-depth video on it. But I'm not mad if you think Jared won. Very close. And it worries me that Paddy thought it wasn't close. I do love Paddy, but I just want to see the kid do well in his career. I say kid, he is older than me, but I want to see him do well in his career. So, yeah, that's all I'm going to say on this fight until I do a more in-depth breakdown. And then, of course, we move into the main event, which was Jan Blachowicz taking on Magomed Ankalaev for the light heavyweight title. And due to this ending a split draw, it's created a mess in the light heavyweight division. We've obviously got the announcement that Glover Teixeira will be taking on Jamal Hill in Brazil now next month, and it's just a mess. Like, I I personally don't see it as a draw. I can see how you can see it as a draw, but I'm gonna make another video breaking this down. But we know Jan won round 2 and 3, Magomed won round 4, Magomed won round 5, and round 5 should have been a 10-8. If you're giving Duplessis a 10-8 over Darren Till, Magomed should get a 10-8 over Jan, because Jan landed no strikes that round. He was just completely controlled for 5 minutes. So it was a 10-8. So the real question is, the fight lies where you score round 1. And I score round 1 for Magomed. Very close, but similar to Chris Curtis, Jan was covering up. Sorry, not Joaquin Buckley. Jan was covering up against Magomed. And Magomed was controlling the exchanges. He was controlling the strikes. And okay, Jan was blitzing forward a bit more, landing more strikes. But ultimately, it lies in the fact Magomed was using his front kick to the body. And I don't normally like to say about commentators and this and that, agreeing with them, because I think sometimes they can be pretty poor. Joe Rogan saying, oh, Izzy's leg was compromised the whole fight earlier when Alex Morono's leg got compromised. No, it wasn't. Izzy's leg went at the end of that fight. But, they were right. DC was right when he said that the story of the first round was Magomed's front kick to the body. Magomed was landing it with success. Every time he threw it, it was landing. And that led to him outstriking Jan. He was already outstriking Jan, in my opinion. He was already winning that round. But the front kick to the body just added more fuel to the fire. Yes, it was close, but I can't see a world where Jan wins that first round. And he definitely didn't win the fifth. If you think Jan won the first, fair play. It's a draw. But in my opinion, Jan lost the first, so it's a 10-8. It's 48-46. And even Jan afterwards, very humble Jan, very much respect. I love Jan, and I don't get how you can hate him. But respect to him going, I might have been a draw, but I don't think I won that fight. So give the belt to Magomed. I mean, it was pretty funny when Magomed was like, I'm going to leave the UFC, but give him his belt. He won this fight, and yes, like the Paddy Gordon fight, I'm going to make a more in-depth video breaking it down. But I just don't see how it's a draw, in my opinion. But, yeah, light heavyweight's a mess. And we're getting Glover versus Jamal now for the title, which Jamal Hill, he's a good fighter. Should he be fighting for the title now? No. He was booked to fight Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith deserves that fight. Anthony Smith has been screwed in all of this. It should be Glover versus Magomed for the title in Brazil, or because of Magomed's legs, because he's injured a bit later on. But no, we're getting Glover versus Jamal, so let's see how this one pans out. But light heavyweight's a bit screwed right now. Please, God, give us back Yuri. So yeah, ultimately, guys, that was my recap and review of UFC 282. I'll be interested to hear what you think about in the comments below. I obviously thought this was going to be the best pay-per-view of the year, but with Yuri Glover falling through, OSP and Gustafsson falling through, and Robbie Lawler getting taken off the card, and Bo Nickel back a few months ago, it obviously didn't live up to that. I think UFC 281 was the best pay-per-view of the year, but we'll be doing a more in-depth review after the Sean Strickland and Cannonier card, and I'll be doing some MMA awards after, probably the 31st, New Year's Eve, just to make it a bit more exciting, leave you in suspense. But yeah, good card overall, obviously shrouded in controversy, but I'll be interested to hear what you thought about it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and like, we've got good content coming up, and share. We've got the Paddy and Gordon in-depth breakdowns and the Magomed Yarn in-depth breakdown. We'll get the fights to make, every fight I make after UFC 282, and we'll be covering the Sean Strickland Cannonier card coming up, and I've got some good content planned over the Christmas period and up until the UFC starts up again. But until then, my BMFers, stay protected at all times, keep yourself safe, and don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe and share.